Hello Facebook, hello YouTube, what is up everybody? This is Ruben and I'm back with another Ruben Report. In today's video, we are doing the head-to-head comparison between my brand new to me 2005 KLR 650 versus my older bike, my 2021 CSC RX3. In this video, I wanted to share kind of a in-depth comparison between my ownership experience between these two bikes so far. With the RX3, I've owned it for the past year now. I just released a full year review video on this bike, so you guys check that out. And I've owned this bike for about 2 months, a little over 2 months now. So before we get into the review, I'm going to show you guys the odometers that I have on both bikes, and then we're going to start jumping into some topics. So on the KLR, I have 14,299 miles. And on the RX3, I have a total of 7,401.4 miles. All right, so before we start getting into some of the topics, I wanted to share a little bit about the history of each bike. So I already said that I've had this bike for about 2.5 months. I bought the KLR 650 on Facebook Marketplace from an older gentleman. I have a video about this bike called my new bike, 2005 KLR 650. If you want a lot more detail about the upgrades and things that I've done so far on it, and a little bit about the background, but just so far, up until this point of me making this video, I put about 2,700 miles on the bike. I bought it when it had 11,600 miles on it. This bike I bought brand new on discount due to some cosmetic damages, but still brand new, came with a warranty and everything. And this bike I've put, as you guys have seen, 7,400 miles on it. So this one only being had for about 2 months, and this one, well, for a full year up to this point. I bought this on January 15th of 2022. It's January 6th now, I believe, so almost a full year, whereas this one I bought this November 1st of 2022. Also, a little background for me as a rider. I bought both of the, well, initially this bike, but just bought a motorcycle in general, mainly for the purpose of daily transportation. I wanted to replace my pickup truck because I used to drive my pickup truck to work and all over the place, you know, commuting all over the state of California, and my pickup truck getting only 13 miles to the gallon. Obviously I wanted a vehicle that was a lot more fuel efficient, and throughout my research and studying, I found that motorcycles were a pretty cheap and affordable and economical method of transportation. So that's what led me to purchase this bike. There's another video on my channel called Should You Buy a CSC Motorcycle Save Money on Gas? Here we are on my YouTube channel, and if you scroll down a little bit, it's quite far down here. I made this video about 9 months ago. Here it is. Should you buy a CSC motorcycle to save money on gas? That video goes in a lot more detail as well about my whole thought process of what actually led me to purchase this particular vehicle. This bike. Now I'm going to be doing an update on that video after this video releases. It's been a full year. I've got concrete data of how this bike has performed so far as a commuter bike, and so I'm going to come out with those metrics and that data to release to the public, how effective this bike has been thus far for the purpose of commuting and being a sole method of transportation. If you guys have watched my review video on this bike, you know that I've been also experiencing a lot of reliability issues, or just in general, following along with my channel, you guys know that I've been experiencing a lot of reliability issues with this bike. And that's what led me to purchase this bike back in the beginning of November. And so now we're going to compare and contrast a lot of different aspects about both bikes, and to see how my experience overall has been so far between the two. I know it's only been a little over 2 months, but the difference has been so drastic that I just had to share. So we're going to start with the category of price. Now, the RX3, as I said, I bought it brand new, but my bike was also on discount at the time. It was on sale for $3,695. That was just the bike before all the taxes and fees. Delivered to my door was about $5,800. And for the entire build, once it was completely built up, was around $6,300. I'm going to show you guys a screenshot of the actual invoice for this motorcycle, along with the way that it used to look after I had it all built out.
All right, here's a copy of the invoice for my RX3. Obviously, I've blacked out all the personal identifiable information, but it does still have my name, so you guys know it's me. It's mine. 2021 RX3 Black Zongshen RX3. I got my bike on discount. I actually got my bike $500 off. Then you add all the documentations fees, the DMV fees, California fees. I bought some oil filters. I got the battery tender. I also got the center stand and the tall seat. And since I got the bike at such a discount, I went ahead and threw on the aftermarket care extended warranty. Right? Brought it all to a grand total after shipping and taxes and other fees. We're at a grand total of about $5,800. Now, for you guys out there purchasing the RX3 that's not on discount, you're going to be looking at $4,200, and that's going to be the base price. Then you have to add on the fees, and depending on where you live, you have different options. If you live near Azusa, well, you can pick it up for free, around $4,600. If you want to get it shipped, well, depending on where you live, it's going to cost you a different amount of money. The shipping rates have actually gone up since I bought my bike. So on the low end, if you live on the western side, it's going to be more around $5,000. If you live more on the eastern side of the United States, on the high end, it's going to be more around $5,100. And if you live in states like Hawaii or Alaska, well, you're going to have to call for those type of shipping rates. But with this type of price around $5,100, this is before taxes. This is before the DMV titling. Going back to my invoice here, I mean, we're already about $100 off from my subtotal, but that's just the bike in itself. What if you want the tall seat? What if you want the center stand? What if you want some oil filters? What if you want the extended warranty? So depending on where you live, you're going to be looking at around $5,500, $5,600, all the way up to $6,000 or more. It just depends on how you want to outfit the bike, whether you want the extended warranty. The list goes on. Here is some pictures of my bike on delivery day. My bike came stock with boxes and crash guards, pretty much the same way that you see it on the website. And then we are going to look at a little snippet from my 3,000 mile review video, where we're going to look at what it looked like when it was fully decked out. So as you guys can see, this is a snippet from my 3,000 mile review video, and at this point in time the bike was fully accessorized. I had a taller top box, some decorative and protective tape around my side boxes, a center stand, auxiliary lights, a Bluetooth tire pressure monitoring system, some hand guards, extended windscreen. I go on a detailed list of all my upgrades and all my accessories on my bike in this video. So if you want to see a list of all that and my review for all those different accessories, you can check this video out. This is the 3,000 mile review video.
And for the KLR, I spent $2,200 for this bike and for the way that it looks right now with the auxiliary lights and the handguards and all the stuff that's on it, with the boxes and everything, right now as it sits, it's $2,900, right? I'm also going to show you guys, pictures of what it looked like when I first got it. And again, if you want to get more in-depth detail about all the upgrades that are on the bike right now, watch my new bike 2005 KLR 650 video that I released not too long ago.
And here are some pictures of my KLR when I first received it. It came with a bunch of goodies already. It came with the rear racks, a smaller top box, a tool tube. Actually came with a beefed up skid plate that I actually replaced with the factory skid plate. But a lot more of these details, we go more in depth in my recently released YouTube video called My New Bike 2005 Kawasaki KLR 650. In this video, I go over in explicit detail all the different upgrades that I have on the bike at this current time, and the exact way that it looks in this video is the exact way that it looks at this present time.
For the KLR, I do have more mods planned for the bike, and mainly due to certain aspects that we're going to talk about in this video. But as of right now, $2,900 as it sits. And possibly after I'm all said and done with all the upgrades that I want to do, it's going to be somewhere around $3,500 or $3,600. We'll just see. You might be able to get certain things a lot cheaper. We'll just see how that goes. So based off of price alone, we can see that this bike here, brand new, is about almost twice the amount of money as a fully capable, very reliable motorcycle known within the adventure world. You can definitely get a used bike, a really good used bike, at a very good price. So when it comes to this price category, I'm going to have to give it to the KLR for being literally less than half the price and almost half the price from when it is that I'm actually going to have it completely built out. All right, this next category, we're going to talk about the features of each bike. And we're going to start with the KLR. The KLR feature-wise is not very much. It's a bike built with 1980s technology. It's pretty bare bones as a motorcycle. And because it's built with 1980s technology and has been relatively unchanged, this is a generation 1. It was first built from 1987 until 2007. So it was unchanged for that entire 20-year time span. And when it comes to modern day expectations, the electrical system and the stator that the bike has, it's pretty underpowered for modern applications. However, from what it is that I've done so far with the way that I've built my bike out now, replacing a lot of the existing lighting with LEDs really frees up a lot of wattage, so that way you can use some aftermarket accessories such as heated grips and things of that nature, which I have on the bike now, and they work great. The bike also has analog gauges. I mean, it really has everything you need and nothing you don't. It does not have a gear indicator. It doesn't have a clock, so this is why I have this watch here. This is just really bare bones, 1980s old school motorcycle style. The RX3, however, is brought up to modern day standards and has quite a bit of features.
Here's a snippet from one of my videos on my channel named CSC RX3 3000 mile review, and this is how I used to have my bike fully configured. I had a lot of these accessories was on my RX3, but I actually transferred them over to my KLR now, such as the auxiliary lights, the windshield extension and top box, things of that nature. But this is how it was fully accessorized. If you would like to get a in-depth explanation and about all these different accessories and my review on those, check out this 3,000 mile review video where I go into explicit detail about all those different accessories that I added to the bike.
Seeing that screenshot of how I used to have the bike built up and how it came, stock, it came with a lot of stuff. You had crash bars, you had luggage, you had a top box. It was just very well equipped from factory. You get auxiliary switches, LED lighting pretty much all around except for the headlight. The headlight, for some reason, this is the only CSC model that they sell, at least to my knowledge at this point in time, that still comes with a halogen head bulb. I don't know why, especially when the rest of the lineup already has LEDs. Why not just upgrade it to LED to make it more in line with the rest of the lineup? I don't know. But everywhere else, there's LEDs for the turn signals and the rear brake. The luggage is lockable. It has digital gauges and a high output stator for 300 watts. So accessorizing this bike is not an issue. Let me show you guys the digital gauges. I mean, you guys saw it when we looked at the mileage. But here, you get your fuel, you get your a temperature gauge, a gear indicator, mileage odometer. You can also switch it to kilometers if you like. So miles or kilometers. It has a clock here, trip meter. You pretty much have everything you need straight off the bat. A DC outlet here for certain accessories and a USB port for your phone. Now, in my review video, I actually show a test of some of these features, and they're somewhat mediocre, but it's nice that it has it. Like, it's nice that it has something instead of nothing, right? I guess I can show you guys the test clip for the electrical, like the USB outlets versus the USB outlet that I have on my KLR. I'll show you guys that clip right now. All right, in this test, we're going to be testing some of the features that are on the RX3, in particular the USB charging and also the 12 volt outlet. I wanted to show you guys how it actually charges your phone, or how effective it is at charging your phone versus just getting something off of Amazon and connected directly to your battery. So the RX3 does not necessarily need to run for the USB port to work. However, the bike has been sitting for a while, and I want to have it run because I don't know if it's just going to drain the battery, because the bike does need to be it has to be on at least. The USB port is not a direct connection to the battery. This, I believe, is, but this isn't. So I'm going to fill the bike up with some oil because I don't think it has much, and I don't want the bike to be running for too long, because I don't want to seize up the engine. So I'm going to fill it up with some oil. We're going to run it. We're going to plug up the phone, and we're going to see how much it charges the battery after about 15 minutes. All right, she's topped off with some oil now, and we're going to go ahead and hook up the phone and let her run. All right, here we go. We're going to set the timer for 15 minutes. And it's on.
ahead and sped this part of the video up because I know you guys want to sit around and watch my phone screen for 15 minutes straight. I also was trying to fiddle around with the phone and the settings to figure out a way to display the battery percentage in a more legible way, but at the end I pretty much found the most effective way at showing it. So we'll see the battery percentage at the end.
Alright, so as you guys can see there, we were able to charge to 38%. So we gained a total of 3% in battery over the course of
15 minutes.
And that was pretty much having the screen constantly on at max brightness. Generally when I ride, especially during the daytime, the phone is at max brightness because you can barely see it in the sun. So we're going to go ahead and put the phone on my KLR with my $15 Amazon charger, and we're going to see how far the charger on the KLR will boost the battery up. Alright, same drill. We're going to be going for 15 minutes. The battery actually shows 37% right now, so that's our starting percentage. With the KLR, I don't have to run the bike because it's tied directly to the battery, so I'm just going to go ahead and press start, and we're going to turn this on, and it is going. So as you guys saw there, I was able to reach 54% with the charger on my KLR. So $15 from Amazon will get you a charger that is 6 times better than the charger that's on the RX3. And mind you, this phone here, there's no SIM card in it, as you guys can see. There's no SIM card. There's no radios working, there's no GPS going, there's no music playing. Usually when I was doing my road trip all the way down from LA, you know, I had my GPS going, it was connecting to the satellite for the GPS signal. It was playing music via Bluetooth to my helmet. And so when you have the screen constantly on with GPS going and playing music and things of that nature, when you have things going on your phone, the RX3 virtually doesn't even charge it. It almost stays. It pretty much stays at the same percent that whatever percent it's at. So if it was at 30%, it would just stay there. It wouldn't charge it anymore. And in some cases, after a very long period of time, I would actually go down 1%, like after an hour or so. So the RX3, as far as actually charging your phone through the USB port, especially if you're actually using it for navigation and things of that nature, it does not do a very good job at all. Doing the same thing with this bike, doesn't matter if I'm doing whatever on my phone. Every time when I hop on and ride to work, I could have 30%. By the time I get to work, I'm like at 70 or 80%. It really does an extremely good job at charging my phone. And you know, I know the back roads of my and the route all the way to my job, so I never have the GPS going or anything like that. I usually have the phone turned off, or not turned off, but the screen off, right? So it does an excellent job at actually charging your phone, where the RX3, it's really lackluster. Okay, I would test the charging ability of the 12 volt outlet socket, but mine doesn't really seem to work. I don't know if it ever did, so we'll just add that to the long list of things that's already wrong with my bike. The charger, it does work. This is what it would look like if it was actually working. It would be all lit up. So as you guys can see, like the USB outlet on the RX3, I mean, it's there. It's nice to have. Doesn't work very well. $15 off of Amazon gets you a charger that is 5 to 6 times better. But all in all, feature-wise, the RX3 is going to win in this category. It's just a more modern machine and very well accessorized for how it is. Now we get down to aesthetics. This is a very subjective category. Folks, the RX3, especially when it was fully equipped, it's a pretty snazzy looking bike. But the KLR 650, it really has that mean, serious off-road presence. It looks like a beast of a bike. It's a very well-known bike. This thing is legendary, has built up a reputation for itself. Everywhere that I go when it comes to this bike, I've had numerous folks stop me and say, you know, hey, that bike could go anywhere, you know, cockroach with motorcycles. And when I pull up on this bike, they know what this is. When I pull up on this bike, people are just kind of asking questions like, what is it? Is this a BMW? Is this a Suzuki? Like, they don't really know what this bike is or what it's trying to be. It's also, there's just not that many customizable options out there to make the bike into, really customize the bike to make it your own. Whereas for the KLR 650, the sky's the limit. This bike's been around for decades. Anything that you can think of when it comes to accessories for a motorcycle, it's available for the KLR 650. So for the category of aesthetics, I can also throw in there the way that the bike sounds. The KLR 650's low growl thumper, it's really been growing on me versus this 250cc thumper. The KLR 650s has really been growing on me, and I really got to give the aesthetic category to the KLR. Comfort. So for this category, we're going to be talking about all the like ergonomics and certain aspects of the motorcycle that make it comfortable for everyday or even long distance touring. For everyday riding, everyday commuting, or long distance touring. Just for reference, I am 6'5", so I'm a really big, tall guy. And when it comes to the seat height on the KLR, we're dealing with 35 inches of a seat height. The stock seat on the KLR is already pretty comfortable as is. I am contemplating upgrading it to a concept seat, tall seat, that'll actually raise the seat height from 35 to 36 and a half. But we'll see about that. The KLR, just in general, is just a much bigger motorcycle in comparison to the RX3. So sitting on it, I just feel a lot more spaced out, and I can slide back and forth on the seat a lot more easier because it's flat. This bike, for long distance touring, I have these highway pegs, which have been a godsend when I was taking my long distance trip all the way down to LA. That was great to have. The engine in itself is pretty unstressed. It being bigger CCs, I know that the KLR is kind of fabled and known for its vibiness, but because of the certain upgrades that this bike already has with the Eagle Mike doohickey, keeping that balancer chain tensioner, and tensioning it properly, the vibes on the motorcycle is really not that bad. And just overall riding, no matter what speed, it's almost half the RPMs as the RX3 or close to it. And so, for example, riding on the back roads, going to work, I'm riding at about 35 RPMs to go about 52 miles an hour with the KLR, whereas when I was riding on the RX3, I had to go 7,000 RPMs to ride around 55 miles an hour. So RPMs wise, the overall comfort wise, the KLR takes the cake there. There is areas though where the KLR is truly lacking though. The suspension on the KLR is extremely soft. All right, the forks in the front are quite skinny and they're standard forks, whereas the KLR has some more, the RX3 has some more beefier forks and they're upside down forks. The rear spring in the back for the RX3 is also pretty well sprung for someone who is a much heavier rider, and it works very well for someone of my size. The RX3 stock has a 31.3 inch seat height. I have a tall seat on here from Concept Seats. This raises the seat height to 34 inches, and this seat has been amazing. I can't really comment too much on the stock seat because I haven't ridden it very much. I've heard that other owners out there would say that it's quite harsh. But if you have the concept seat on there, the comfy concept seat on there, it's fantastic. So also for the comfort category, I'm going to have to give it to the KLR just because of all the available options that are out there to modify this bike, and even just stock for someone of my height is just absolutely great. The RX3 just doesn't have the aftermarket support to modify the ergonomics to fit as many body styles and body types as a KLR does. Moving on to the safety category. Now, in the safety category, we're going to talk about the front brake first. And for the KLR, I just have to admit, the front brake on the KLR is absolutely terrible. This is a 230 millimeter rotor and a single piston caliper, and the front brake barely does anything on the KLR. It is way too underpowered for the size and weight of this motorcycle to bring it to a stop. The CSC RX3, the rotor here is a bit bigger. It's I believe it's a 268 or 266 millimeter rotor. Don't quote me on that, but it's a twin piston caliper instead of a single. So the braking is better than the KLR, not by much, but it definitely is better. So I'm gonna have to give that to the RX3. Also, the KLR doesn't have any hazard lights, right? Whereas the RX3 does, right? Which is right here. So with this being a much more modern motorcycle, it has certain features on it as well, such as ABS. That's also something that the KLR just doesn't have. This is more of a off-road oriented type motorcycle, whereas this is more of a street oriented, a little bit of off-road, but more street oriented touring bike. And so we're also comparing, again, like I said before, 1980s technology to modern day. So this bike just has more modern features that make it more safer overall for modern times. So in the category of safety, I'm going to have to give it to the RX3. It just has a better front brake and the hazard lights and ABS system. However, when it comes to the KLR, I will very soon be addressing the front brake issue. So with this oversized brake rotor that I already purchased. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to come out with a video on installing that, and I'm going to get a review on how much that's going to change the overall safety of the bike. And you know, once again, I just have to continue to reiterate this point, because we're going to continue to see this pop up again and again and again. The availability of aftermarket parts for the KLR to bring it up to modern standards or to correct any of its deficiencies is just amazing. You know, the front brake is going to be addressed, the suspension is going to be addressed. Had the KLR been completely outfitted, probably would have been a different debate. But I kind of wanted to compare the bikes, you know, pretty much stock as much as I could, just so I can make it a fair battle. Okay, so the next category, handling. The KLR dry weight, this is a generation 1. KLR dry weight is only 336 pounds, but it has a 405 pound wet weight. It has a very large 6.1 gallon gas tank. So a lot of that weight is fluids being gas. It's also liquid cooled, and it holds about 2.5 quarts of oil. All right. The way that I have the bike equipped right now, with all the stuff that I have on it, is probably somewhere around 450 pounds, realistically. The bike is top heavy. I don't know what it is about this bike though, and I'm really comparing it to the way that the KLR is configured now versus the way that the RX3 was configured when it had all the stuff on it. Because the RX3, the way that it weighs now, is about 386 pounds, but when I had all the stuff on it, it was more around 430 pounds. Okay. The RX3 also has a 385 pound dry weight. So when it comes to the way that this bike used to be configured, there's only a difference in about 20 pounds. So taking that into consideration, you know, maneuvering or manhandling the KLR, like pushing it around my garage, because it's like a more top heavy or taller motorcycle, it oddly just doesn't feel as unwieldy or cumbersome or heavy as the RX3 did when it was fully fared and fully configured, you know, doing the same thing. And I'm mainly thinking that's just because the KLR has a higher center of gravity. So again, maneuvering it around, pushing it back and forth was easier. However, if it leans over too far, like tipping it just feels really heavy really quick. Whereas the RX3, that wasn't the case so much. And I just think because the RX3 has a lower center of gravity, it's a smaller bike, but because that center of gravity sits a bit lower, it just feels a bit heavier, you know, moving it around. But that's just a weird observation that I have between the two bikes. The KLR, as you guys can see, I mean, it's currently equipped with more dual sport oriented tires, like 50/50 tires. And the RX3 is equipped with more 80/20 type tires. So 80% on-road, 20% off-road. So the handling that we're reviewing today is more street use, because I use these motorcycles, or was using this bike, and I'm using this bike mainly as a commuter motorcycle. So just riding on the street, getting to and from, you know, point A to point B. And when it comes to that, the RX3 definitely feels a lot more easier to maneuver and handle, especially with the tires that it has on it versus the tires that are on the KLR. The KLR, however, does feel more stable on the highway. It has a longer wheelbase. It just feels more planted. But it's also not really as stable on the highway. And what I mean by that is the front end wobbles a little bit more than the RX3 does. I can definitely address that with a fork brace, but I just don't have one on there right now. Whereas with the RX3, I have videos of me riding on the highway where I was able to take both hands off the handlebars, and it was, completely stable. Having a throttle lock, so that was great. Because this is a lighter motorcycle, I do get blown around on the highway. Well, really with both a bit, but a lot more with the RX3 because it's a lighter motorcycle. But the RX3, because of its shorter wheelbase, you are able to make tighter turns, and this bike is a lot more flickable, as you say. You can lean it a lot easier. That's probably more due to the tires than the overall weight. But I really think just the whole geometry of it being shorter, it being just a little bit lighter, you can lean it on its, the tires are more street oriented. A lot of those play in together to make it more flickable and handle a lot better riding on the street. So handling category, gotta give it to the RX3. All right, so we're back into my garage. The remainder of this video is going to be in here. It's starting to get quite dark outside, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next category, which is going to be build quality and fit and finish. Now, when it comes to the KLR, the KLR 650 has tried and true manufacturing processes that are industry leading. I know that this particular motorcycle, a Generation 1 KLR, is still built with 1980s technology, but from the short time that I've owned it and the maintenances and upgrades that I've done to it so far, I've had the side case to do the doohickey and certain things off of the bike, just to deal with certain things, and everything that I've seen on the inside of the engine and out, when it comes to fasteners, everything, I've seen nothing but quality. When it comes to the RX3, it is a Chinese motorcycle, and having owned this bike for the short time that I've had it, it's really shown me all the areas where the Chinese have really just cut corners. The fasteners on the RX3, I've already been having an issue with it, but just seeing the engine internals and seeing how the way this particular bike has been constructed and put together, it really puts the Chinese to shame. And again, this bike was made in the 80s, from 80s technology, manufactured in 2004, 2005, and this is modern day. You can really see how the KLR was really built to last. We have superior Japanese engineering and quality control, and you also have premium metallurgy. So there's different manufacturing techniques that are out there. I saw a video once again from a very famous YouTuber called Fort9, and he released a video not too long ago explaining in detail and from a very scientific standpoint the different metallurgy that is used in motorcycles and what is best suited for overall reliability. I'm going to go ahead and share a link to that in the description below for you guys to check that out. But when it comes to, for example, a lot of the components and fasteners on the KLR are steel, and go ahead and watch that video to find out why that's so important and so nice. Versus, I really don't know what the hell they use for the RX3, aside from the fasteners, the Chinese engineering techniques, it's really manufacturing to cut costs, but then maximize profit. So a lot of the engine internals are just engine casings and things of that nature. It really looks like it's CNC'd or casted, versus with the KLR, it looks like it's forged, especially with the engine internals. The design of the RX3 is also kind of questionable. It kind of doesn't make any sense because they use materials, typically speaking, that are supposed to shed weight and increase performance, but at the same time be reliable and durable. Like, I just don't understand the way that they designed the engine per se for long-term durability, especially when they claim that this bike is has been proven or is a long endurance engine, but the metallurgy and internals, just what they actually use to construct it, just doesn't add up. So when it comes to the category of build quality, fit, and finish, there's really no contest. I'm gonna have to give it to the KLR. And I also want to address this point. You'll hear it a lot, either with certain reviews or certain opinions out there about the CSC line of motorcycles. You hear that the fit and finish is just as good as fill in the blank motorcycle. And now, having ridden some other motorcycle that isn't a Chinese bike, I just don't see it. I just don't see how anybody can hop on this bike and immediately say that it's better than anything made from a reputable manufacturer within the last 30 years. I'm also, and that's not just my opinion. I mean, there's plenty of other reviewers out there who have that opinion as well. I mean, the CSC RX3 truly does feel like it's constructed with some of the cheapest quality parts for the highest profit. And I know that now because I actually do own a different bike now to compare it to. There's also a clip from a reviewer who shared his opinions on a CSC motorcycle. He reviews a lot of different motorcycles altogether.
Next question is from a fat guy on a little bike who asks, how does it compare to the CSC bikes? No Royal Enfield dealer in my neighborhood. So this is your California scooter company here in the United States, CSC. They have bikes like the RX3, the RX4, bunch of other stuff. They are, I think, Zhongzhen, if I'm saying that correctly or remembering it correctly, is the actual Chinese manufacturer of those bikes. My comparison, the reason I saved this question is that I think, as I've said a bunch of times, but I'll reiterate here, I like the feel of this bike. It feels high quality. It feels a little bit antiquated, yes, but it has a sort of charm and it has nice detailing here and there that I really appreciate. And I when I ride a CSC, I often find that it just feels like it was put together with the quickest and the cheapest possible way, and it doesn't charm me the way that this bike does. I would prefer to have a Royal Enfield than a CSC, personally. But I understand that you're not near dealers, so that's a struggle, and maybe this question's not helping you.
All right, so in this category, we're going to talk about reliability overall, and starting with the KLR. Now, everybody already knows that the KLR has a legendary reputation of being an unkillable, round-the-world touring champion that is the cockroach of motorcycles that is ready for the zombie apocalypse. I mean, this bike has to be one of, if not the sole bike out there in existence that has the most proven history for reliability. There's a video made by Fort9 of him purposely trying to kill his KLR, where he flogged it, jumped it, dumped it all over the place. He tried to drown it. I mean, he did all kinds of things trying to kill his bike, and it just kept on going. There's also in when it comes to the category of using this bike as a commuter bike, being ridden every single day or very consistently, there's a plethora of owners out there, YouTubers out there. There's folks in general that have put thousands and hundreds of thousands of miles on bikes like these and only had to deal with general maintenance. To name a few, we have Wattman, who at the end of 2021 or towards the middle of 2021 had about 180,000 miles on his 2004 model KLR, which comes out to a total of about a little over 10,000 miles a year. That's some really good commuting numbers. You have folks like Survival Nomad, who has over 71,000 miles on his KLR. You have a guy like Johnny Utah, who has over 50,000 miles on his 2012 model KLR. You have YouTubers who have literally traveled the world on a Gen 1 KLR, just like this one. Alex Chahon is one of them, where he rode over 82,000 miles over the course of 500 days. You break that up into years, that's about 60,000 miles a year. So no matter how many miles a year or how many miles you ride this particular bike, as long as you keep up with the general maintenance of changing the oil and lubing things, just general maintenance, the bike will just run forever. And there's two specific upgrades that you can do to truly make this a bulletproof bike, and I've done them already: the thermal bob and a doohickey. Thermal bob right there, and the doohickey, as I mentioned before, on the other side when I open the engine cases.
Here's a short little snippet of a video that I did upgrading the doohickey on my KLR 650. I upgraded it with the Eagle Mike torsion spring and doohickey, and as you see, it's installed, ready to go. The bike, after doing this upgrade, you never have to touch it again, and it's good for the lifetime of the engine.
And these two upgrades are something that Wattman, that I just mentioned, who has over 180,000 miles on all original engine internals, 180,000 miles on his bike. He has these two upgrades, and he has, with these two upgrades, he's gone that far on his 2004 Gen 1 KLR doing just general maintenance. And I expect to be able to reach close to that, if not at least well over 100,000 miles on this KLR, God willing, I keep it that long. So all in all, KLRs properly equipped are generally going to outlast the rider, and that's the main reason why people get rid of these bikes. It's not because it breaks like this one does, but mainly because people just get bored of it and they're ready for something that's more exciting. Now, when it comes to the RX3's reliability, it's very unknown and unproven, questionable. And according to my own experience, especially if you watch my review video on this bike, the reliability of this particular Chinese motorcycle, and many like it, is just absolutely pathetic, especially in comparison to even other motorcycles of same displacement or just any other adventure style motorcycle out on the market in general. And it starts with the low build quality. All the places where they cut corners in the quality department, it really rears its ugly head later on in ownership. So just to name a few of the things that I've experienced, is valve recession issues. So the valves just recede into the head. The stock chain wears out extremely quickly, around 1,500 to 2,000 miles. It doesn't fly off, but it just stresses so excessively that you literally after every ride you have to adjust it. So it's just best to just throw it away and put a good quality Japanese chain on there. I have gaskets and hoses and bolts stripping. We just talked about the fasteners, and this is where the bike has been parked for the past 2.5 months, so it's been dripping, making a pool for itself. Again, I talk more about this in my review video, but the gaskets that were on this particular motorcycle was actually replaced not too long ago, because I actually had the top end rebuilt to try to solve the valve recession issues, but it was unsuccessful because, well, if you replace the same low quality, cheap engine internals with the same low quality, cheap engine internals, it's just a matter of time before you're going to have the same result. Okay. There's some type of electrical issues going on with my bike, stalling and backfiring, leaks everywhere. The battery that I had in it that came with it only lasted 7 months. I mean, the list goes on. And you know, me listing all these problems that I've been dealing with this bike, you would generally expect that list of issues to be issues that you'll be dealing with, you know, a bike of this age, right? Keep in mind, this bike is only 1 year old versus an 18-year-old bike, right? Valve recession, you know, gaskets leaking, gaskets failing, electrical issues. I mean, these are all issues that you would expect with a much older motorcycle. So reliability wise, again, if you're thinking of buying a Chinese bike brand new and you think it's going to be better than or more reliable than, you know, a used quality bike, you're sorely mistaken. Okay. So reliability category, the RX3 is absolutely pathetic. The CSC motorcycle is absolutely pathetic. The KLR wins, no contest. And now we're going to get to the maintenance category. Now for the KLR, you have much longer service intervals. To be honest with you, it'll still even run if maintenance is neglected. Truthfully, it's not just my opinion that you got to take. Just take the opinion and take the words of the literal thousands of folks who have literally ridden these bikes around the world. The KLR can forego some maintenance and get you where you need to go. The valve inspections on paper are about 7,600 miles, but realistically speaking, from owner's experience, it's anywhere between 15,000 to 40,000 miles. Once the valves settle in, they generally don't change. So as far as doing valve inspections, because you find so many of these bikes with lower mileage, folks have probably done it once and then haven't done it ever again. When I bought this bike, the original owner, he did the valve inspection about 6 years ago. I have no idea how many miles that was ago, but just going off of the average mileage that I calculated from, you know, when I bought the bike, maybe 6,000 miles ago, 5,000 miles ago, I went ahead and checked and adjusted the valves shortly after I got the bike. They were generally in spec, but I went ahead and except for one of the exhaust valves, so I went ahead and adjusted them and put them all towards the middle of the spec range. And so not too long ago, I went ahead and checked them again, maybe like last week, and it's been, you know, over 1,600 or 1,700 miles since I did that valve adjustment, and they're still perfectly in spec. The oil changes on the KLR are simpler, much simpler. You have your oil filter cap, the oil fill cap right here, your oil filter right here, the drain bolt, okay, is right down there. You don't even have to take off your skid plate to get to it. You just drain the oil, fill it back up, change your oil filter right there, you're done. With the RX3, it's a little bit more complicated. Okay? I don't have the skid plate on there now, but I have plenty of videos on my channel where I've done oil changes on this bike, or just general maintenance in general on this bike. And doing an oil change, you have to take the skid plate off. I had a quick release drain plug on mine, but generally you would have to take the drain bolt out. Then there is a oil filter screen on this side. There's also another oil filter screen on the other side, along with the oil filter. So it's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more steps, and it makes things a lot more messier as well. Whereas with the KLR, oil does drip down here, but because this is kind of protruding outwards, it's very easy to put some, paper towel down there or have a couch stand down there, and it won't get very dirty. Whereas with the RX3, it's a little bit more complicated and a little bit more tedious. The air filter on this bike is right here. You have one screw, you take this cover off, air filter is right there. Where with the RX3, well, I'll show you a clip on how to get to the air filter for the RX.
Here is a clip from my 2,500 mile service video, and as you guys can see here, in order to access the air filter, it's actually right here where I'm pointing with the mouse. You have to take the seat off, then you have to undo this panel on the left side, and then there's altogether about 5 bolts that's holding in the air filter. Okay, and to get it out, it's not very hard to pull out, but it's just a lot more tedious and a lot more work that needs to be done to actually get in there to get those bolts out and to pull the air filter out.
All right, after you guys saw that clip, you can see how getting to the air filter is a little bit more challenging. The overall cost to maintain is much lower when it comes to the KLR. The KLR, you could get oil filters for like 20 bucks. Matter of fact, again, I'm just going to show you guys screenshots of what it is that I've found on the internet for certain general maintenance items between these two bikes.
So as you guys can see here on Amazon, there is a 6-pack of oil filters available for the KLR 650. And down here you can see it is compatible with all model years for around 20 bucks. If you have Amazon Prime, you can get fast free shipping. That'll take only a day. I bought this 6-pack of oil filters already, and it only cost me about $20 flat. It was actually a little bit cheaper back then at $18.44, and I'll show you the screenshot of that now. So here's a screenshot of the pack that I purchased, and so it was pretty much $20 on the spot, delivered straight to my door. And here is a pack of 6 oil filters for the RX3 on the CSC website, available for a whopping $50. But with the CSC website, you have to pay for shipping, and with taxes, it's going to be more around $60 to $70. Now, I believe that if you spend above $75 or $100, that's when shipping is free. And so overall, with the amount of oil filters that you get for the KLR 650, because the oil filter is only required to be replaced every other oil change, this is enough oil filters to last you 30,000 miles or more. And with the RX3, it's really recommended that you replace it every single oil change, and this is enough oil filters to potentially last 15,000 miles, but good luck reaching 15,000 miles on that bike.
So talking more specifically about maintenance on the RX3, it's extremely excessive, especially when it comes to valve adjustments. The bike is much more likely to fail if certain maintenances are ignored. See, there's a lot of tolerance here when it comes to the KLR if maintenance is ignored, but with the RX3, it doesn't like that at all. 5,000 mile valve adjustments is what is quoted But from my own personal experience, valve adjustments are every 300 or 180 miles, just depending on how you adjust them. If you adjust them at the very end of the spec, 300 miles. If you adjust it at the very low end of the, lower or mid of the spec, 180 miles, which is, again, absolutely insane. And it's just, why is there a modern vehicle or modern motorcycle that only goes 300 miles between valve adjustments? It's just pathetic. And these have the screw type adjusters, where this has a shim. And I know that there's certain folks out there who would claim, oh, well, the screw-on adjusters, they don't last as long. There's plenty of bikes out there that have screw-on type adjustments. Even the KLR 250. There's the DR 650, the DR Z400. There's the Honda XR 650L. There's a lot of different motorcycles out there with screw-on type adjusters that don't have the problems that this bike has. So it's not the screw-on type adjustments that causes this valve recession issue. Watch the valve recession issue video to find out what actually causes that problem. It's truly lack of build quality and poor engineering. We also have the availability of parts. Okay. Now we're going to be talking a little bit more on the convenience side, which we've already kind of been talking about when it comes to the KLR. Like, it's more convenient to do oil changes. It's more convenient to see the air filter, to get to the air filter, and on this bike and this and that bike. But also just the convenience of being able to get parts. For the KLR, because it's such a much more known, well-known bike, I can go to my KLR dealership, I can go to Amazon, I can go to Partzilla, I can go to 3D Cycle Parts, Ego Mike. There's a plethora of different websites that I can find parts. I can even go down to my O'Reilly's down the street and find parts for this bike, which I have. So as far as parts availability and convenience, keeping a bike running, if there ever was something to get wrong, I can very quickly get this bike up and running and back on the road. Whereas with the RX3, I've had a couple instances where I wanted to order parts, and because there's really only two sources to order parts from, that's either from CSC themselves or from, websites like Alibaba, eBay, Chinese websites. Okay. You can, and because of that, it's very, depending on basically what the experience has been. If CSC doesn't have it, then you just have to order it from China yourself. Go ahead and wait a month, 2, 3, 4 months, or even longer, to get the part that you need. And good luck with that. There's other parts as well that are kind of use items, such as the headlight bulb I got off of Amazon and the spark plug I got from O'Reilly's. But other than that, like actual proprietary parts or OEM parts, you're gonna have to get them either from CSC or from some type of Chinese website, eBay. Again, good luck with that. Another aspect about convenience, it's very difficult to get this bike serviced in a shop, mainly because it being a Chinese bike, a lot of mechanics out there, they like to put warranty on their work. And because this is a bike that is very unknown, and it's a bike that doesn't really have that much of a reputation, mechanics just don't want to put their hands on this. They don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, because the warranty on their work means that they're going to fix it, and if it fails again after X amount of days, 60, 90 days, it has to come back, and it's on the shop to, do that work and to get it back up and running again. So when you have a very low quality bike like this, obviously it's going to come back to the shop multiple times for pretty much the same issue. So your best bet, if you're going to try to get a bike like this serviced in a shop, your best bet is to go to those mom and pop shops that don't have such strict policies when it comes to maintaining things. So if you're lucky enough to get this bike serviced anywhere, just be thankful that it can be serviced at all. Otherwise, you'd have to live in California, basically, like I do, and take it to CSC directly themselves to do certain work on it. And if warranty work needs to be done, well, that's pretty much one of the only places that it's going to be done. Other than that, your warranty is pretty much just parts, and you're gonna have to do labor yourself. And I've touched on this a little bit before. This bike comes with a warranty, and there's also an availability for an extended warranty. But like I said, the warranty is kind of useless because of the factors that I just stated. Unless you do the work yourself. I mean, I don't know if CSC is willing to just continue to send you parts for the same issues. But that's also kind of a loophole when it comes to the lemon law protections for certain buyers. According to the lemon law, you have to have the vehicle serviced. But when you have a vehicle like this that's very difficult to get serviced, that's pretty much how CSC kind of avoids the lemon law. And they've been doing this with a lot of other different owners. They've been avoiding that lemon law like the plague. So if you buy a bike like this, you just have to know that you're going to be on your own when it comes to servicing it. And if it breaks, it's quite easy for CSC to just say, hey, it was due to malpractice by the owner, or improper maintenance by the owner. And as I've been stating, often in times before, as far as the aftermarket availability when it comes to these said maintenance items or repairs that need to be done on this bike, it's very low. There's not that much availability. Whereas with the KLR, the sky's the limit. So overall, with the KLR, because of the quality of this bike, the maintenance intervals being so low, and with the part availability being so high, it's also just in general very, very unlikely, as long as you are keeping up with your maintenance, it's very unlikely for you to need some type of major maintenance done on this bike, especially if you address these two things. Two of the most common issues are the doohickey failing and kind of grenading the engine, or developing excessive oil burning issues because the temperature is not regulated properly. You solve these two issues, those two issues are done, done for good. And so it's really just general maintenance to be done on a bike, which any bike you're going to need. You should clean the carburetor once a year minimum. In general, you just spend a lot more time riding than you do wrenching. And there's no warranty with a bike like this, especially because it's really old, unless you buy a brand new one. But you're very unlikely to actually need it, and most don't. So starting with the KLR, you guys can see the widest part of the motorcycle is actually the handlebars. So I'm going to measure the handlebars of the KLR and give you guys the results of how narrow it is and how convenient it is to lane split here in California. All right, so as I hope you guys can see, we are at about 35.5 inches for the KLR, which is really good for lane splitting. And I've experienced this while I was riding through LA and to LA, riding on the interstates. It was very easy for me to get in and around traffic with a this big bike. And for the RX3, the widest part of this motorcycle is actually the mirrors. So we're gonna get the tape measure out and measure those. All right, I got the tape measure on there, and as you guys can see, we are at about 37.5 inches for the RX3. So even though this is a smaller, more nimbler, better handling bike, ironically, the KLR 650 is actually more convenient for lane splitting, with it being only 35 inches wide. And as you guys can see, I mean, the handlebars truly are the widest part of the bike. The luggage in the back just doesn't compare to the width of the handguards. Same thing holds true for the RX3. So that last category was really two packed into one. It was maintenance and convenience. And for both of those categories, I gotta give it to the KLR. It is much more lower maintenance. Maintenance overall is just easier to do. The maintenance intervals are so much longer. It's so much easier to get parts. It's also a lot more convenient to get certain parts from all different sources, a variety of different sources. You can get them a lot cheaper, and overall just operating the bike, using it for the purpose of commuting, being able to lane split, the KLR is just a better lane splitter as well than the RX3. So there's that.
All right, in this category, we're going to be talking about performance, and it's not really going to be that much of a fair fight because we are talking about a much larger CC engine versus a smaller displacement engine. But nonetheless, we're just going to go ahead and start off with some spec sheet facts, starting with the KLR. KLR 650 has a 652cc engine that makes about 42 horsepower at 7k RPMs. This is just paper numbers. Realistically, I have no clue how much horsepower this bike actually makes at the rear wheel. Probably in the high 30s, maybe even mid 30s, who knows. It makes 34.6 foot-pounds of torque at 5k RPMs. So peak torque is lower in the RPM band. The red line is at 7.5k RPMs, as you guys can see here. All right. Now, with the KLR, I don't think there is a rev limiter, at least to my knowledge. Truthfully, the bike really just runs out of air, or just runs out of, give once you get, close to 7K. The top speed that is quoted online is 95.6 for this particular model, 2005. I personally, as it's configured, have gotten it up to 94. I'll show you guys a screenshot of my GPS app doing that. And this bike has a 16-tooth front sprocket on it. And with that 16-tooth front sprocket, I found it to be the most optimal for commuting, and so have many other users as well. With the 16-tooth front sprocket, I'm able to cruise at 65 miles an hour. All these mile-an-hour figures that we're discussing are GPS numbers, not speedometer numbers. At 65 miles an hour, GPS is going to be at 4,500 RPMs. And I can do 72 miles an hour GPS at 5,000 RPMs. The speedometer with the 16-tooth front sprocket, speedometer is off by about only 3 miles an hour with the KLR. But generally, if I ride on the highway, I'm anywhere between 4,500 and 5,000. I'm generally a little below 5,000. Because it's fabled with these KLRs that above 5,000 RPM, they tend to burn oil. So I just stay away from that
altogether. Even though I have the thermal bob upgrade, I just stay away from 5,000 RPMs altogether. If I'm on the highway, 65 miles an hour, 4,500 RPMs, I found that I get the best gas mileage that way as well. So no harm there. A side note I do want to mention is that during my ride going all the way down to LA with this bike, I rode it at 75, 80 miles an hour GPS, pretty much the whole way there. I checked the oil before I left, and when I got back after accumulating over 1,000 miles, it didn't seem like it burned any oil to me. It was darker for sure, but it didn't seem like it burned any oil to me. So, and doing 75 to 80 miles an hour, you're a little over 5,000, but closer to about like 5,100, 5,200, up to like 55 to 5,600 RPMs. So it's definitely above 5,000 RPMs, but not much. And again, with the 16-tooth front sprocket, it's definitely lower than what it would have been with the stock gearing. So as far as oil consumption is concerned on this bike, haven't seen it, don't really have it, and I hope it never shows up, especially now that I have the thermal bob. I'd like to not have it, and for the majority of riding that I do is well under 5,000 RPMs, unless I do another interstate ride again. Mostly I ride around, if I am on the freeway, it's just highways, so 65 to 70 is fine. But if I actually do travel back down to LA again, taking the interstate, you know, I'll be traveling more at interstate speeds, you know, 75, 80. With the RX3, it is a different story though. I did pretty much the same ride down all the way down to LA, and we did have quite a bit of oil consumption on this bike.
Here's a snippet of my post road trip maintenance and review video that I have on my YouTube channel. This is right after I came back home from my long distance trip back and forth from LA. And in this video, we take a look at the valves, and we also look at the condition of the oil, just to see, you know, just in general, a overview of the bike, how everything is doing, how everything ran after riding for over 700 miles back and forth. And as you guys can see down here in just a moment, you see here the oil level is about less than half. Every time I do an oil change, I always fill it completely up to the top here. So we've consumed quite a bit of oil on the RX3 during our long distance trip.
This bike, but obviously, you know, this bike practically has to work twice as hard than this bike does, and we'll see that when it comes to the spec numbers that we're going to go over later on. When I ride on the back roads, I am sitting at 3,500 RPMs, and at 3,500 RPMs, I'm able to go 52 miles an hour GPS, or 55 miles an hour indicated on the speedometer. My gas mileage range varies anywhere from 40 to about 50 mpg, or realistically 39 at the lowest, all the way up to 51 at the highest. I actually have a video on my channel that I did with the MPG run. When I started that test, the days before, I was doing a lot of highway riding, so we started the test with like 50 something miles on the odometer or tripometer already, but I was just doing my regular back roads route during that test. And the first section we filled up, we got about 39 miles to the gallon. And then once we did the other loop, which was strictly back roads, that's when we got our MPG reading for strictly back road commuting, and that was 51 miles to the gallon. So depending on how I ride the bike, I have that range from about 40 to 50 miles to the gallon. But with mixed riding, It's because typically what I do now, I don't necessarily just ride a specific way like I was with this bike because of the reliability issues. I have a lot more freedom to just do what's most convenient, and that's pretty much what I've been doing. So I do a lot of mixed riding on this bike. 45 miles to the gallon is what I'm typically averaging with all kinds of riding. This bike has a 5-speed gearbox. I really wish it had a 6th gear. I mean, well, don't we all? Coming from a bike that does have a 6-speed gearbox, I actually bought myself this keychain to serve as a reminder that you're already in the top gear. Methods to increase performance, depending on what your use case for the bike may be. Maybe you want more low-end grunt for trail riding. You can go down in a sprocket. The 14-tooth front sprocket seems to be one of the best upgrades for the bike. Stock gearing is obviously 15-tooth front and then a 43-tooth in the rear. I use it for commuting, so I have 16-tooth in the front and 43 in the rear. But another, that will be the cheapest and one of the most effective ways to modify it to have performance gains. But a lot of other folks love to do big bore kits. So they just like to modify it to bring up the CCs. I think the most common one is a 685 kit. Some even go up to 692 or a 705. I've even heard. The big bore kits, they're quite expensive. You also lose in the fuel economy department, generally speaking. They do give you a bit of performance gains, but not much. And if you're really going to chase down that rabbit hole with a KLR, wanting to increase its performance, it's just, you're much better off just investing money in a particular bike that's more specialized for whatever use case that you're chasing after, right? So not to say that it's completely useless, it's just for the money that you're going to spend, you know, chasing after performance, it's just better to just have another bike for that particular use case. This bike's specialty is being a jack of all trades and master of none. So a Swiss Army knife, yeah? The KLR will get the job done, okay? It's not the best at it, but it gets the job done. And that's what folks love about this bike. And the last thing that we're going to talk about with the KLR is the weight limit or carrying capacity. On paper, it says about 400 pounds. Realistically, Fortnite did a video, again, with the torture test for the KLR. And in that torture test, he was trying to haul almost like 700 pounds or 670 something pounds, and the KLR just didn't mind. So not only going according to that video, just again ask the thousands of folks who have done actual adventure rides with this bike or many others, fully loaded up with all kinds of crap, even possibly riding 2-up again across the world. So as far as weight limit is concerned, I really don't know what the realistic weight limit of this bike is, but whatever it may be, it seems to not mind hauling a rider and whatever you want to carry around to wherever it is that you want to go. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the RX3. This is a 250cc motorcycle. It makes 24 horsepower at 9,000 RPMs. That's its peak horsepower. It also claims to make 16 foot-pounds of torque at 7,000 RPMs. It does have a 9,000 RPM red line, as you guys can see here. And the RX3 does have a rev limiter. I believe it's either 10,000 RPMs or 10.5 thousand RPMs. I forget, but it's somewhere around there. The top speed of this motorcycle is acclaimed to be 84 miles an hour on paper. Me personally, especially when the bike was fully fared with the crash guards and all that stuff, and boxes, I've gotten it with stock gearing. I've gotten it up to 79 miles an hour. The top speed with the stock gearing, when it's all dressed up, is more around 75 miles an hour, and those are GPS speeds. The Speedo will tell you like 10% off. So for example, if the Speedo says 77, you're really going 70 or 71. If the Speedo says 61, you're really going 55, so on and so forth. It's about 10% off with the speedometer on this bike. So it just depends on what speed you're riding at. With the KLR, it's 3 miles an hour off no matter what speed you're going. So if you're going 33, you're really going 30. It's not a percentage, whereas with this one it's a percentage. So keep that in mind. The top speed that I've ever ridden this bike was in this current configuration, stripped down, and I was going downhill for like a mile. I reached 85 miles an hour GPS. All right. It was screaming the whole way down. I wouldn't suggest that you try it. Okay. So with this bike, in its stock configuration with the stock gearing, it's actually pretty high strung out. It's really tall gearing for the bike. Most folks benefit from going down in gearing. Some go, up in teeth and rear just a little bit. Most folks just go down in the front, one tooth. So the most common upgrade for this bike to increase performance overall is just putting a 13 tooth front sprocket on there, because the original sprockets are 1444. And that's also the setup that I generally had with this bike through the majority of my ownership. And with 1344 gearing, I was able to reach 80 miles an hour top speed, so 1 mile an hour faster than the stock gearing. And whenever I was riding, if I ever rode on the highway, it was just a lot easier to keep up with traffic. And also when you would hit those hills or have a headwind, you wouldn't lose speed so drastically. And that was a big issue with this bike. With stock gearing, anytime that you would reach a hill, you would have to downshift because it just doesn't have enough power to really push up hills and things of that nature. The RX3 with stock gearing, it will go about 60 miles an hour GPS at 7,000 RPM or 70 miles an hour GPS at 8,000 RPM. But I had mine with lowered gearing, so a 13 tooth in the front and 44 in the rear. And I was generally riding at 55 miles an hour GPS at 7,000 RPM. And if I was riding on the highway, I would be at 8,000 RPM, and that would give me 65 miles an hour GPS. So you see the difference between the two front sprockets. It's about 4 to 5 miles an hour difference. The MPG performance that I got from this bike, that was pretty much the number one driving factor that I chose a small displacement motorcycle over a bigger displacement motorcycle in the beginning. I wanted to maximize MPG performance as someone who wanted to use a bike to commute. And on paper, the RX3 got 65 miles to the gallon. In reality, throughout my experience, I would average anywhere between 55 miles to the gallon. But that also depends on how I was riding. On the low end, when I was riding on the highway or did those highway tests with the stock gearing, my lowest was 40 mpg. or 41 mpg actually. And then the highest mpg I ever got was 68 mpg. I was with lowered gearing and doing the engine break-in process. So I was riding around like a grandma, basically around 30 to 40 miles an hour. But typically during my actual commutes, I always commuted with this bike mainly on back roads, riding 55 miles an hour. I would get around 55 mpg. The mpg performance for the RX3 is not so simple, mainly because of the reliability issues that we discussed a little bit earlier with the valve recession. I kid you not, this is exactly how things went down within my ownership experience. As I stated before, valve adjustment intervals were about 300 miles or 180 miles. My daily commute was 60 miles, 30 miles one way, 30 miles back. So at the beginning of the week, I would get possibly 57, 58 miles to the gallon. By the next day, I'll be down to 55. The next day, I'll be down to 54, 53, 51. And it just goes downhill from there. Depending on how long it is that you go, your MPG performance drastically decreases the more that you ride the bike. So this is why I say average 55, because the valve recession issue on the bike is going to make your MPG performance overall inconsistent. So that's another aspect about the performance of the RX3, is that the performance just overall is inconsistent, because it's not just your MPG performance that is affected, it's your top speed that's affected when it comes to valve recession, it's the idle speeds, the exhaust note. I mean, it's a variety of different things. The bike starts to stall, it's just all bad. So the performance of the RX3, on paper, it is what it is. My averages that I'm telling you, these are just based on, again, an average. But any particular day of the week, it could be something totally different. And by the end of the week, or even in the middle of the week, you're going to need to have to give the bike attention so that way it continues to run properly. The bike has a 6-speed gearbox, and there are big bore kits available, like the KLR. I just don't know much about them. I don't know if there's anyone, there probably is someone who has done it before, but I don't know how effective it truly is. Possibly you gain a little bit in the bottom end. Again, I'm not sure. I just don't know if it's that much more effective. It's just so much better to just change the gearing. It's only a 250cc, so chasing after power with such a small displacement bike, I mean, do what you will, but yeah. So overall, the RX3 is more built for back roads and inner city commuting, which is the reason why I bought it initially, because that's what I expected that I would be doing when I purchased this bike. It wasn't really until recently where I took this bike all the way down to LA that I started to realize that having a bike that's a bit more capable is just convenient. Also, so far without my ownership experience, the bike that I had before this was a CSC TT250. That was only 229cc. This is a 250cc. I mean, just me in general as a rider, it was pretty much it was time for me to upgrade to a bigger CC bike, having a bit more power, feeling a lot more comfortable with a more capable bike overall. All right. And lastly, the weight limit for this bike is 330 pounds versus the KLR's, well, don't really know what the realistic weight limit of this thing is. Okay, so in the performance category, well, again, we already knew this was an unfair fight to begin with. Obviously, I got to give it to the KLR. The KLR is a much more capable motorcycle, all the way around. There really is no deficiencies where this bike is severely limited. It's great for pretty much wherever it is that you need to go, whatever it is that you want to go. Also as well, if you are that kind of person where you want to jump down that rabbit hole to chase after performance, there are endless amount of aftermarket options, once again, for you to be able to do that. Big bore kits, jetting options, aftermarket exhausts, airbox modifications, different, tires, and some type of scent mod that I don't know too much about. I'm not really big in all that. I just want to maximize fuel efficiency. So the bike is good enough the way that it is. Unless I find something out there to make it get even better fuel economy, I might chase after that. Our next category is going to be value. So now taking into account all the different categories that we have just talked about, based on what you spend and how much bike you get for the purpose of commuting, the KLR, it truly is, in my opinion, possibly the cheapest, most capable overall motorcycle that you can buy in the market today. With all the categories considered, there really is nowhere where the KLR is severely lacking. And even in those categories, there's a plethora of aftermarket options to remedy those things. As I mentioned, the front brake, safety. It's going to be addressed very soon, I promise. The suspension is going to be addressed, well, whenever I save up enough pennies to address it. But you guys see what I mean. These are very easy to remedy. And even after upgrading those certain areas, I'm still going to be only about $3,500 into this bike. And once it's fully equipped, it will literally be equipped to be able to go anywhere. I can ride this thing on the highway. I can ride on some back roads. I can ride up a mountain. I can go anywhere on this bike and do anything on this bike, and it'll just go forever. And there's bikes you can do like I did and buy, a bike for really, really cheap and then fix it up or deck it out the way that you want to. Or you could just buy one that's already fully decked out with everything that you want. And you can find these bikes on the used marketplace anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 all day, possibly even cheaper. Now, talking about value for the RX3, spending around $6,000 for one of these brand new, especially with all the plethora of options out there that are like this bike and many others, I just don't see it. I just don't see the value when you can spend literally less than half the price in most cases and get something so much more. Especially when you take an account for the performance, reliability, convenience, maintenance, and other categories where the RX3 performs so abysmally. It's really hard to justify this particular bike really for any use case. I know that we're reviewing this mainly from the perspective of being a commuter bike, but I mean, come on. There's just certain aspects about performance that this bike is severely lacking in. And not only just performance, reliability, and all around. I think a bike needs a certain baseline level of reliability to be viable for anything. And the RX3, it just doesn't show it. Too many corners were cut when it comes to the quality and the long-term reliability of this bike really shows. I'd even have to argue that a project bike has more value than this bike does. With a project bike, you can go ahead and spend $200 to $500, troubleshoot its issues, invest your $1,000 to $3,000 into it, maybe even $4,000, depending, or $5,000, depending on if you do the work on all yourself. And at the end of it all, you'll have a bike that actually works and is worth something. Whereas with this one, the more it breaks down and the more that you continue to try to fix it, it's just the definition of insanity, because it's the low quality parts that is causing the issue, and you're going to continue to replace them with the low quality parts that are available from the manufacturer, and there's no aftermarket out there that's going to replace the OEM parts to be superior. So you're just going to be in this constant loop of fixing and wrenching and fixing and wrenching and making yourself go mad. So as far as value is concerned, there's really not much here. Where the majority of the categories where the RX3 performs in is either mediocre at best or just downright pathetic. A used motorcycle, even something as old as a KLR, it really doesn't take much money invested to bring it up to modern standards, and it just exceeds in so many other categories that the price of the RX3 overall is just not justified. So for the value category, it's really hard to beat the KLR, and there's many other bikes like it that are out there on the used market, DR 650s, XR 650Ls, you name it. Now, the last category we're going to talk about is the community. Now, the KLR 650 community has literally been around for decades, consisting of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions of users and riders across the world. If there's any issue that you experience with your bike, it has most likely already been dealt with, and there's really no issue that you can't experience that you can't find information out there on how to solve it. There's excellent video guides and tutorials and shop manuals available for this motorcycle. There's also lots of memes and just jokes among the group members. It's just an amazing group of people, very knowledgeable people. There's certified and expert engineers and mechanics a part of the group, and KLR experts that are very friendly and willing to help you at any time of need. Especially when I first got this bike, I put up a video of it running a little bit, and immediately someone replied, "Oh, this is the air cutoff valve, and this is probably an issue." And sure enough, that's exactly what was wrong. And it really, fixing those issues really drastically improved the overall performance of my bike. So the community for the KLR 650, I'd have to say is unmatched. They are very, very loyal and fanatics about this bike, but for good reason. Its reputation and its overall performance and trustworthiness and reliability has proven itself worthy of such praise and such a following. For the RX3, it's a much smaller community. This is not a very well-known motorcycle to begin with. There's lots of new riders like myself. You're coming in because of the low price point. You're very curious, and there's even some older riders as well that are also curious about the bike. You've had a lot of different bikes before, and you want to see what this thing is all about. But they're just not as knowledgeable as about certain issues. Sure, there's a lot of forums out there, or there's a lot of input on certain forums, but because this bike is just not that old yet, and overall there's not that much consumer reports out there either. A lot of the information that you could find, sometimes it's credible, sometimes it's not. It just depends. And within the RX3 community, there are a handful of knowledgeable folks that know a thing or two, either about mechanicking or engineering, but definitely not as much as a KLR. And there's just a much more broader wealth of knowledge because, again, this bike has been around for decades. So when it comes to the community, Again, I'm gonna have to give it to the KLR. It's just superior in every aspect. Hopefully, as possibly, I don't know whether or not the CSC or any other Chinese brand of motorcycles, if they continue to prove themselves, maybe the community will grow. Maybe the community will be a lot more open and honest about certain issues, so that way we can get the aftermarket for this bike up and booming to address certain, some of these issues as well. But that's also going to require really an overhaul of a lot of different systems on this bike, and it just might be an undertaking of a project in and of itself.
All right, so in our conclusion here, we have gone through a total of 13 categories, and in 10 of those categories the KLR 650 excels, and in 3 of those categories the RX3 excels. Those 10 categories for the KLR are price, aesthetics, comfort, build quality and fit and finish, reliability, maintenance, convenience, performance, value, and community. For the RX3, we have features, safety, and handling. Now, truth be told, when it comes to the categories where the RX3 excels in, these are all categories that I would generally expect any more modern motorcycle that has more street-oriented tires to excel in when it comes to, in comparison to the KLR. But once again, not all is lost for the KLR, because there is a plethora of aftermarket accessories and aftermarket items that you can do to correct some of those categories that the RX3 showed strong suits in. Again, I'm going to be addressing the front brake very soon. I'm pretty sure there's some aftermarket switches of some sort if I really wanted to get hazard lights. The suspension is also going to be addressed at some point when I save up enough pennies to get that done. And as far as features like the USB socket, I mean, there's certain features on the RX3 that are nice, but even if I wanted to get a digital cluster or anything else of that nature, it's possible for me to do so with the KLR, as I don't really think it's necessary. If it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it. But then other features like the USB port and things like that are just kind of mediocre. Really easy fix. I mean, $15 from Amazon. You guys already saw the comparison video. I mean, the features on the RX3, I mean, they're there, but they're very mediocre at best, and subpar. So overall, the KLR is a much more superior bike for the purpose of everyday or long distance touring, commuting. All right, I hope you guys found this video very informative, entertaining. I hope you learned something about both bikes, especially for the CSC RX3. I know it's not a very known motorcycle out there, but it's nice to have something to compare it to and have the perspective of someone who has owned one long term. I will, as I said before in the video, I will be releasing an update to my CSC should you buy a CSC motorcycle, save money on gas video. I'm going to be doing an update on that. We have concrete data and statistics, results of how much this bike has helped me save money on gas over the course of the last year. So I'm going to be releasing that video sometime soon. Until next time, guys, stay safe out there, and